では午後の一つ非常に大事なセッションですけれども、メディアラボで行われている最新の研究の成果、そしてどういうビジョンでそういう研究を進めているか、それを先端で実際に活躍している研究者3人にこれからレクチャーをしていただこうというふうにしてもらおうというふうに思います。最初はプロフェッサー・ジョー・パラディーソ、続きましてAkane、サノ、アフェクティブコンピューティンググループの研究者です。そしてナタン・リンダー、彼はフルイドインターフェースの研究 PhD の研究者です。それぞれ3人に独自のパースペクティブ、研究の成果について発表してもらいます。ジョー。
Thank you very much, Hiroshi. It's a real pleasure to be here in Tokyo, to see many old friends and meet many new friends here, and to tell you about some of the work that my group is doing at the MIT Media Lab. We look very broadly at the concept of connecting humans in many ways to this electronic nervous system that's covering the planet. Sensors are appearing in pretty much everything that we buy and bring into our homes. These things are more and more having internet connectivity. So we're seeing the world sprout what essentially we can consider to be an electronic nervous system of its own. And I think one of the real challenges for many of us here is to really think about how we interface people in many, many ways to this electronic nervous system. So I'll give a few examples of projects in my group that address this in different ways. I'm going to talk initially about some browsers of various sorts we're making to integrate all of this sensor data into one place, kind of a digital omniscience. We have a few different ways we look at it. We think a lot too of smart environments of this kind that we're building with all these sensors and also actuators as being something like prosthetics. They're basically interfacing to people to help them do what they do better, to make them more comfortable. For instance, the HVAC, the heating, air conditioning of your home, should be looked at as kind of an extension of your sense of comfort. Lighting can be thought of as automatically enhancing vision, perhaps. So we have systems we're building that look at that. Looking perhaps at the sense of proprioception. That's the sense of how you're moving, how you're navigating through a space, how your muscles and your limbs are moving. We've built systems that are sensing this kind of thing for athletes. I'll give a quick example of that. And finally, perhaps a sense of empathy, broadly interpreting sensing. We're looking at cameras that go beyond just, for instance, recognizing a face or seeing if you're smiling. Of course, in this country, you make beautiful products in that space leveraging digital signal processing. We're looking at cameras that are interactive, that physically will pull stories out of people. So I'll give examples of all of these if I have time. So first, looking at what we call digital omniscience. We have a system we call Doppelab now. It's a kind of a thing we've been working on for a few years, but in the last year, we've used the Unity 3D game engine to really unify sensor data of all sorts that come from our building. Buildings can be thought of as having their own autonomic nervous system. We have built a virtual world where we can take this data and bring it into one environment. So data about how the building is regulating temperature, data about how people are moving around and using this space, data from social networks. So this is a video showing the Doppelab in action. So that's the virtual building, and now we're zooming into it. We're seeing the sensor data. Here you see mainly the data from the HVAC system, the heating and air conditioning. And you can see the squares in the atrium here are actually sensors we put out to measure temperature and humidity. The fog is telling us the kind of humidity level that we see. If it's pink, it's more humid. If it's blue, it's less. You're seeing people's tweets show up. That's the Media Lab news service there in the middle. But if you get near people's offices, you see their tweets, their virtual information. That's showing motion and activity. Now you're hearing people. So we have microphones all over the building, and we're cross-fading it as you move around in virtual space. So you're hearing the real Media Lab. But we scramble it, so you cannot understand what people say. So we're scrambling audio grains, eliminating them. That's my synthesizer, which is producing a digital feed. I built it myself years ago. It's in the MIT Museum now. But, you go by it, you hear it. It's all spatialized. You're looking down into the atrium again. You're seeing the heating and air conditioning system. So you're seeing how far the different offices are from their set point on their thermostat. And we, of course, have the ping pong table. You'll see that in a minute. And we have other views where you can actually see the data itself pop up as you fly past the sensors. So we're looking at different ways of representing the data. And now you're going to see people walk by. So if people have badges, when they walk by the RFID readers, you can see their picture drop from the ceiling on a cube. And then when they walk away, it materializes, it disappears. So these are people just showing up. This is actually from the sponsor meeting that we had. So you're going to see a lot of people show up. We sped up time. You can speed up time here in our interface. And you can see people starting to arrive. So when they walk past the reader, you're seeing a cube with their face if you have their image appear. So you can see people moving around the building. Again, many different kinds of information all integrated into one place. There's Nicholas. This is the ping pong table, which also has sensors on it. Again, every bit of information we can unify here. So you can see a ping pong game being played out in the virtual world that happened in the real space. So somebody just lost. So I can be bold. That's cache data. Right now at the Media Lab, it's 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. There's some people there for sure, but not quite so many. But I'm going to try to run this environment so we can see, because the network's a little bit slow. Yeah, they're starting to see the data crop in. So that's the sensors in the atrium measuring the air quality. It's blue. The fog is blue, so it's really dry, and it's cool. That's why the other things are blue. And now you're seeing the HVAC sensors appear. So that's the heating and air conditioning in every office. It's in setback now because it's the evening, it's not regulating temperature. The red pulsating spheres means it's too warm, the blue means it's too cool relative to where it's normally set. And we have a new user interface. This is the first time it's been shown where we can zoom around and explore the building. So I can click, for instance, on an area here that I want to zoom into, and I can start to explore it. Here's Joey's tweets. Of course, Joey is here tweeting about the meeting, and you can see them showing up there in Doppellab. So then we can just zoom out, and I can turn the walls back on, and there's the building. So again, a unified framework, lots of data streaming in, still under development. We're adding a lot to it, making it do even more. But it's kind of intriguing to give you kind of a sense of omniscience, a virtual world where there's no laws of physics that constrain where you are. You can just flow through it, look at different scales, look at different kinds of data, and really try to browse all of this stuff that's flowing in. You can run it in a web browser yourself. If you go to doppellab.media.mit.edu, you can try to run it. It doesn't have the audio in that version yet, but you can run the graphics. We are looking also at fusing wearable data with cameras. We've put cameras all over the lab at various times. We'll be doing it again probably fairly soon. We have lots of systems put into place to try to guarantee privacy and security. No time to go into that, but we think deeply about that when we put these systems out there. But we're looking now at combining data from wearable sensors with data from the cameras to get the best of both worlds. If you look for the radio, you know somebody is nearby. You can look for them in the image. If you see them moving with the accelerometer in the wearable, you can find them in the camera. So you can do the best of both. And we look also at using the video to try to bring together the sensor data onto video, as opposed to using a virtual world, render the sensor data onto a video. And we're looking at it in particular in our examples for worker safety. We had a project with the Italian energy company, ENEL. They ran very large construction projects to build nuclear power plants. This one is in Slovakia. And they were interested in trying to monitor the workers to look at safety-relevant context. So we built a sensor that could be put onto, for instance, a construction worker, measuring lots of environmental parameters and streaming the data back in real time. So this is a video we built to demonstrate the project. This is at MIT. We didn't make it to Slovakia. It was the middle of the winter, so it was very cold there anyway. They were welding in this space and painting. They were putting air conditioning catwalks up there. And we have base stations with cameras, with radios to talk to the wearables. The base stations measure many parameters, including air quality of various sorts. The wearables measure the same parameters. Also, they can look at people moving, locate the workers, and look at which workers are working with other workers with infrared sensing. So that's our base station. You can see the environmental sensor to the right. That's the wearable, much smaller now. We've cut it in half. The particulate sensor is a little bit bulky. The other sensors are quite small. So we built a video environment to integrate all of this right onto the video. So now we have kind of a safety control panel where you can identify the worker in particular by seeing his accelerometer move together with the pixels in the image. So we can know who is who, and we can track them and draw a circle around them, and depending on their safety context, we can change it. Here he's gotten too high, we can tell his height from the pressure sensor, so we can color him red. So that could be a safety violation. If you look at the background color, we have a sensor measuring ozone, a sensor measuring volatiles. The volatile is purple, so this is a purple background. He's got more volatiles. This guy's got more ozone. And of course, if you're welding and you're painting, you don't want these guys to get too close together. So you can start to call out alerts of various sorts right on the image, both in foreground and in background. So again, another way of trying to browse this sensor data from everywhere. We're also looking again at control, and we had a project that we talked about quite a bit in the unconference session I ran just a couple of hours ago. But we really think about going past what people do now. Thermostats are the wrong way to control the temperature, humidity, and air quality of a space. You really want that to come from the occupants, ideally from the comfort of the occupants. So if you can ascertain somehow the comfort level of people in a space and use that to control the air conditioning to save energy, but still maximize comfort, you're doing something that's much more relevant than just regulating temperature on a piece of wall, which is what we do now. So the key to that is a device we built to wear on the wrist. It's measuring temperature, humidity, measuring motion continuously, integrating how much you're moving. It has a radio, so it uploads every minute the data to a local ZB base station when it finds it. It can locate the device to within roughly an office, so we know what office you're in when you're there. And it's got buttons. You can tell the system if you're too hot or too cold. And that's all you do. You don't set a temperature. You don't do things that have less meaning. You're telling it something that's relevant to you. You're too hot, you're too cold. And it will build a model for everyone who has one of these devices for their comfort. It's inferring their comfort as you label it with the sensor data. So after you say you're too hot or too cold for a few days, it builds a model of you, and then it uses the sensor data to infer comfort, temperature, humidity, amount of activity, and then we control the air conditioning and heating.